Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I hope you're well. I'm grand, thank you. It's a bit of a chilly day. It's not freezing cold, but it's been really rainy and damp and windy and so it's definitely, oh yeah, I can see my breath. It's definitely feeling like we're going into winter properly now. It's always the way here, isn't it? We have a relatively mild December, mild January, and then at the end of January, going into February, we suddenly get cold. Anyway, I thought I'd pop down today because, well, I'm not actually going to do any work in the garden because it's really wet underfoot and I just don't need that kind of cold. But all my different bits of seeds have been arriving. I've had some at home. I've had some in the shed, so I've just brought everything together to make sure, just had one last look through everything, make sure I've got everything that I could possibly want, look at where I've got spares, where I can do swaps and giveaways and that sort of thing. And because of that I thought, well, I'll have you all along to the shed too and show you exactly what I'm going to be growing this year. So I'm probably going to rattle through quite a lot of it. It's going to be a mass of names and information. This video won't be to some folks' liking, but I know there are quite a few of you who are interested in the specifics of what I'm going to be doing this year, so we'll get stuck in. Just before I do, I should say a quick thank you to my lovely friend Jan over in Seattle for sending me these fantastic Felco secateurs. They're absolutely fantastic. They come apart, you can get replacement parts for them. In theory, these ought to be the last ever pair of secateurs I use. Not because I'm going to keel over tomorrow, but they should last a lifetime, even if I have to get replacement parts. I do need to get a sharpening stone, and I need to, with the sharpening, what I thought I'd do is practice on one of my other sets of secateurs that are now not quite so precious to me. So I practice, because I've never done any sharpening, if I practice on a pair that don't matter to me and perfect the art, then I should be able to keep these in tip-top nick for many years to come. So, whoopsie, thank you very much, Jan. Also, just arriving on site today, I couldn't help but have a poke, because if you remember a few days ago, I was kind of noticing all the established rhubarb clumps around this whole site. Everything's showing and growing already. So I thought, oh, I wonder how mine's doing, considering it was a little division cutting at the end of last year. So just moved the leaves away just now, and yay, the first little sort of sign of life, the first little pink shoot. It's only about an inch or so, but it looks from that, fingers crossed I haven't jinxed it now, it looks from that like it's put some roots down, it's found its new home, it's liking it, and it's starting to grow. So I've left it covered with that little pile of leaves and the little sort of bit of fleece on the top of it for now, just because it's so young. It's only a little baby. We are quite chilly, we may get snow at some point, I don't know, but I just want to protect it for this first year, just while it gets established, and then try to resist eating from it this year. Right, okay, I've got all my seeds here, so let's crack into the seeds. So, starting with bed number 1, the furthest bed away from my shed, that is going to be my vining bed this year. So, tomatoes, squash, cukes and peppers. Starting with the tomatoes, oops, have I got my packets in a muddle? So I don't have particularly pretty packets to show because these are my saved seeds. Hang on, where's my, oh there it is. I thought I'd lost one for a minute then. So I'm going to do my petit pois rouge, which is the little red pear, and the, oh hang on a second, the Gardener's Delight. The reason for the Gardener's Delight, they're a prolific cropper. They're a great all-rounder. They're lovely raw in salads, and they bottle really well because they're slightly higher acidity than other tomatoes. Brilliant, that'll be the majority of my tomatoes. The little Petit Pois Rouge, they were also a prolific cropper last summer. I won't have as many plants of those as the Gardener's Delight, but again, they were great for sauces and bottling. Brilliant. And then my last tomato will be my my boring packets. I only make the nice packets for other people. This is the Rose de Berne. So last year's Rose de Berne was my first year from saved seed from the tomato I brought back from France in the summer of 2017. So these are my second save of seeds. So I'm hoping they're going to work. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't. The Rose de Berne, again, not quite so many, but grown. It's a lovely, sort of quite a big, chunky, fleshy tomato, which is really, really lovely for salads. And even for sort of cooking, for sort of frying, if you're doing, say, a stuffed portobello mushroom with a slice of the tomato in it. It's quite a meaty, chunky tomato. So that's my tomatoes and my reasons for growing them. Next, I'll come to the squash last because there's so many. So with the peppers, I am once again going to be doing my, it's a sweet pepper called Orange Bell. This is I think this will be my third year with them. Yes, I think last summer was my first summer using saved seeds from the seed I produced in 2017. So this is going to be now the second or third generation of saved seeds. Again, there's no reason they shouldn't come good. Fingers crossed. They originally came from the Real Seed Company, and the reason I chose them was because they are a pepper which will grow outdoors. You don't need a greenhouse, and I know there's tons of us who don't have a greenhouse. On some allotment sites you're simply not allowed one. So if you really like peppers and you've been thinking, I can't grow peppers, I don't have a greenhouse, give these a go. They're called Orange Bell, and to get your initial seeds, go to the Real Seed Company. What I love about them as well is when you get your seed packets, you usually get instructions on how to save your own seed. They're doing themselves out of money by doing that, aren't they? But I think it's a great ethos trying to get us to save our own seeds. So yeah, give them a go. You never know. These are also saved seeds from last year. This is from the Paprika Peppers that I grew last year that we never did know the name of, but I think it's something called, I'm going to pronounce this completely wrongly, Fair-Ozen. Look, there's the spelling. Can you read that on there? Fair-Ozen. I think it's a Hungarian paprika. Again, it's more of a sweet pepper than a chili pepper, but it's got a little bit more flavour to it than the Orange Bell. It's been really lovely to cook with. And then last but not least, I always just do a couple of them, is my little French pepper called Du Long de Londe. Again, it's a sweet pepper. It grows long and skinny. I don't have a huge amount of space for them, but what I tend to do is just put a couple outside the shed door. Now, I've not had issues before with my Du Long de Londe and my Orange Bell cross-pollinating. That's not been an issue. The paprika were introduced for the first time last year, but they were a ways away. So I don't know if I will have ended up with some cross-pollination. There's no way I'll know until I plant these all and get them growing. Fingers crossed they come good, they come true. If not, I'll have some sort of interesting peppers to eat and look forward to. And then just behind the peppers will go the cucumbers. Once again, I'm growing long green maracha. I was talking in a couple of videos ago about our bogey plants, mine being sweet peas. And I thought it'd be worth mentioning with the cucumbers that I have tried different varieties over the years. I've probably tried maybe 7 or 8 different varieties, again, all specifically for growing outdoors because I don't have the greenhouse to grow them in. First year I grew, I can't remember, it was something white. I can't even remember. I don't need to remember because it didn't work. Absolutely useless. And then about, I think 4 or 5 years ago, I tried long green maracha and they worked great for me. I've tried others as well since then, but nothing has ever worked for me apart from long green maracha. So it just shows if you've got a bogey plant it may be just that specific variety rather than that vegetable on the whole. So don't give up, maybe just try a different variety. So again, this is my saved seed. This is now, so this must be 4th or 5th generation by now, because after that first year I saved my seeds. So last year's cukes were grown from, it'd been 3 or 4 years old. You know what I mean. I don't mean it's seed that's 5 years old. I haven't kept it for 5 years. I've kept it from last year's plants, which were grown from seed saved from the year before, which were grown from seed saved from the year before, which were grown from seed that I initially got about 5 years ago. So there we go. I think I got my seed from Chase Organic. If you want to give them a go, have a look at Chase Organic. Oh, actually, just before I talk about the squash, because these are all things I'm going to start indoors, so in my organisation here, I've also got along with them two of my other indoor starts, which aren't the vine bed. That is my celery and my celeriac. So I'm going back to my beloved Utah celery. So I didn't bring my list of everybody who gave me seeds. I'm really sorry. I've had seeds from about 12 or 13 different people, and I wrote it all down, but without having that list I can't remember. So let's just make the assumption that I'm saying thank you to you individually, but I'm going to have to do it across the board. I'm so sorry, that's really rude of me, isn't it? Anyway, so I'm going back to Utah, which I've grown for the last 3 or 4 years, except not last year because they all failed because of hinky compost. But I really like them to use them as a cut and come again. And they just keep coming and coming and coming. And I've even had them over winter for me. So fingers crossed for these. How many? There's 700 seeds in this packet. So fingers crossed I don't have another fail. But if I do, I won't wait as long to realise the fail this year. I'll get another lot going straight away. So these are going to go in about mid-March with all the other stuff I'm showing you, apart from the Celeriac, which will go in a couple of weeks. This variety is called Prince. I've tried a couple of different varieties, but the Prince seemed to have done slightly better for me than others. I mean, I have to say, I only grow tennis ball size Celeriac. It's a one-person feed, if that, by the time you've peeled it and gouged out all the wood lights. But anyway, I'm going to give them a go again, but this year I'm going to add loads more muck, hopefully. That's from the Organic Gardening Catalogue. So I wasn't going to use them, but I ended up that I have used them just out of convenience. But there we go. Yeah, because there's tons of stuff they sell now that's not organic. Never mind. Right, squash. So you all know I'm a little bit of a squash fan. One of my main reasons for growing winter squash and growing so many is they store really well for me. So that's a really great source of food all through the winter, right through spring, even into the summer. Really good vitamins in there for me. That orange coloured flesh, because a lot of what I eat over the winter and into the spring, I'm eating a lot of green stuff. So it's great to try and kind of get all your other colours in as well. So yeah, I love to grow squash for how well they store, but also they seem, I don't want to jinx myself, they seem to grow quite well for me here. So it makes sense to grow something that is fairly easy, fairly prolific, but that is going to feed me for a long time. That's a lot of food from a small amount of space, really. So I am down to the last couple of scraps of 2 favourites, and one of them, I think it was the Sucrine du Berry. I didn't actually find again this year, so this is a seed that's a couple of years old, so I'm hoping for the best with it. This is that one with a slight hint of nutmeg to it, really beautiful. And another old favourite is the Violina, which is that one with the kind of gnarly, almost like a pachyderm's skin. Not the warty one, that's a different one. Oh, they're going flying because I've got a couple of little plastic packets. Hold on a sec. It's also probably because parts of my body have gone numb and I can't sense it. So those two are firm favourites that I've grown before. What else have I grown before to show you? I've got the last couple of seeds of the Rouge Vif de Tombe. That's the big Cinderella. I'm not sure if I'm going to have space for it this year. I'm having a think about it. I'm desperately scratching my head as to where I can put it. Now, the thing with the Rouge Vif is they are beautiful. I get a big pumpkin each time, like, you know, absolute whopping. I've never weighed them, or I think I've weighed them and forgotten, but there we go. When I cut into them, there's easily the equivalent of sort of 6 smaller squash. So where I would use a smaller squash to make either 4 meals in terms of soups or 2 meals in terms of 2 halves roasted and stuffed, the Rouge Vif would do, oh my goodness, I would probably do 20 portions of soup. So from that point of view, it's a good one because there's a lot of flesh in there, but it takes up a lot of space, and I've only ever had 1 squash per vine, so that's why I'm hovering. And this is how I always think, this is how I tend to think and plan the garden, is how much am I going to get from that plant? How much space is that plant taking up? Is it worth giving over that much space to one plant if it only produces 1 fruit? But if that 1 fruit is massive and I can get loads of meals out of it, that might sway me. Okay, jury's out on that one, still not sure. But, oh, they're slippy slidey. The Carnival that I grew for the first time last year, they were the big bush clump forming ones with lots of little sort of acorny type squash. They were really prolific. 6 or more squash to each vine. So they're definitely being grown again this year, but on the ground. Now I've got a few newbies to try. One of the issues with squash, as I'm sure many of you know, is cross-pollination. So I do save some of my own seed, but there's always the risk that it's going to be some weird thing that grows because it's cross-pollinated. So squash is one of the things I do tend to buy seed for, or swap with friends who only grow 1 variety, that sort of thing. So because I've used up a lot of my own previous seed, I've had to buy some new this year. So I'm going to have a go with good old Walton, the butternut. It's like a bog standard butternut, but I'm going to see if I can get these to go up the teepees so that I can use the ground for some of the bigger, heavier ones. Fingers crossed. This one, Burgess Buttercup, I've never grown before, but again it's one that I should be able to get climb, and it's all about space, isn't it? The more I can get to climb, the less little footprint I'm giving everything. Just to say as well, with real seeds, they've always done these little plastic baggies to send the seeds in, but they are changing. They're going to paper packets for everything now. Yay, good on you, real seeds. I'm falling more and more in love with them every day. And then finally, I think this is another smaller one that I'm going to try and climb, Cream of the Crop. Never grown it before, don't really know anything about it, but from what I read, hopefully I can get it going up, less space, lots of fruits, who knows. And then finally I'm growing a Delicata. Again, they're quite a small squash. One of the reasons I love the Delicata is they come up about sort of like about 8 inches, about that sort of fat. They're great if you're just eating on your own. You cut into them, roast both halves, for example. You're not left, so with the Rouge Vif de Tombe, the massive one, if I cut some out to make a meal, that means that same day I've got to chop the whole of the rest of it up and get it either cooked or frozen. So yeah, the Delicata is nice if you're a 1-person meal eater. Just means you're not having to do anything else with the rest of the flesh. And then finally, in a similar family in terms of vining, but this is for the deck and fence area, I've got the Birdhouse Good. I've also got some more, I've got tons actually, that's loofah seed. And then I've got I've got some more achocha seed. So again, they're in this pile because they're all indoor starts. I'm going to start everything. Soon be time to start. Yeah, I'm going to start them all. But those things for the deck fence area, I'm not sure how many I can fit in, but these are certainly something that I think, at least if I get them going and established, you know, as little plantlets, that these are the ones that I'll talk to the committee about to maybe dot around the site in some of the communal areas, and if not, sort of give them to friends and neighbours around the site who may have a little bit of spare space, and we'll whack some teepees or some kind of trellisy structures up for them to romp away on. So can't wait for those. Right. Whew, told you it's going to be a whistle-stop tour. I'm going to try and speed up now. So, bed number 2 is where I will have my cathedral bed this year. So I'll have 6 large teepees for climbing squash. They'll be underplanted with various salady type leafy things, which I must be better at sowing successionally this year. And then in front of those, I'm going to have my teepees for peas, and in front of that will be, well, currently the broad beans and then the cocos. So, what have I got by way of leafy things? I've got some, right, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Cimarron. It's a romaine lettuce. So they were sent to me last year, but I didn't have a chance to plant them. So they're definitely going in. I've got, of course, I've got spinach. So I did have some seed left from last year. I'm growing a variety called Matador. I find it's a summer spinach. Oh, that reminds me, someone was mentioning spinach for the pie I made the other day, so I might look at finding some winter spinach as well. But I love this Matador one. Last summer, it took ages to bolt, so considering how dry and hot we were, I was really impressed by it. They went on for quite a while, but they've got lovely, you know, quite big fleshy leaves, so they're a really good robust leaf for your salad, or even for cooking with, if you want to cook them. So I did have some seed from last year, but I've bought a little bit extra because I'm going to sow it successionally, and yeah, I love my spinach. I'm going to get through a lot of it, I would think. Then for beetroot, I've got some, I don't know how this is pronounced, gesh. Now I can't remember why I've opted for this one, because previously I've planted bolt hardy or bolt hardy. I can't remember why I've chosen this one. I'll have to Google it again and see why, and then tell you later. But yes, some spinach, beetroot, Swiss chard again. I love the Swiss chard. It's, you know, it's still standing even in this frosty weather. I mean, it gets a little bit saggy when it's really frosty, but you can get a supply from, gosh, June right through, where are we now, January? It's fantastic. And again, it's another plant that I use as a cut and come again. So when I'm harvesting, just take a couple of leaves from each plant, or one leaf from each plant, let the plant carry on. It just keeps coming and coming and coming. So it's brilliant from that point of view in terms of the space it's taking up and the amount of food you're getting. And I always go for the rainbow chard, because I love that mixture of reds and pinks and yellows, and so such a cheerful sight, especially as we sort of go into November and so many of the other plants have been taken out of the ground. It's lovely to have that little pop of colour. Oh yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited. Stop it. Calm. Oh, and then finally, I couldn't find the lettuce I grew last year, which is a real shame because I thought it was fantastic. It was called Reuben's Red. If any of you see it around anywhere, and maybe I just didn't look properly, but let me know where you've seen it, because again, despite our heat and drought, it didn't bolt for ages. I mean, it kept going and going and going. Again, I was using it as a cut and come again, occasionally pulling a whole head if I was going home and preparing meal for lots of other people too. a mixture of red leaves and green leaves, quite a good bite to the leaf, not as bitey as, say, bitey, is that a word? Not as bitey as, say, something like rocket or even spinach, but yeah, not as bitey as an iceberg, but maybe on a bitey par with Little Gem or something like that. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about it because I haven't got any seed. I'll have another look. So instead I've opted for Drunken Woman. I don't know, I first saw this a couple of years ago. It's from Rob's seed collection that he does for Dobies. And I've met Rob a few times and he's a great chap. I really like him, so I thought, do you know what, Rob? I'm going to give you Drunken Woman a go. And I'm sure there's tons of us who've grown Drunken Woman just for the name of it. I don't know, do we have to consume vast amounts of alcohol before we harvest our crops, Rob? I don't know, let me know. Oh, and then it's not really going to be in the salad bed, but this is my fennel seed. This is a change for me. I've always grown the same fennel ever since I started here. But when I was looking at real seeds, I saw this one and it's described as reasonably bolt resistant. And last year my fennel all bolted really suddenly, quite quickly. So I've opted to give this a go. It's always quite nerve-wracking, isn't it, when you change either the variety of seed you're growing or your seed supplier. Because if something's worked for you for a number of years, why would you want to change it? And generally I wouldn't. However, like I say, because this one is described as being reasonably bolt resistant, I thought I'd give it a go. And because the seeds I have had from Real Seeds over the years have always come really, really good for me, I've put my faith in them to do a new thing. Right, now give me a sec while I find the next little lot.